I went to claim my daughter's body. At the entrance to the morgue, my husband, Edward, was holding his mistress, Irene, and her daughter, comforting them. The little girl was wearing a black butterfly hairpin in her hair, which was a birthday present I gave my daughter. I decided to kill them. But when I took my revenge and killed them one by one, the police told me that they had been dead for a long time. This was the 10th time I'd been kicked out of the police station. Mrs. Grant, we understand how you feel. Please accept our condolences. And please believe us, your daughter Lily did accidentally fall into the water and drown. Policewoman Eerie stood in the doorway, her expression serious, her tongue cold, as she comforted me. This was the 10th time she had stopped me. The reason was that I was making a scene. Since my daughter's funeral, I had been to the police station almost every day, but the answer the police gave me was always the same. She said, my daughter, Lily, had accidentally fallen into the water and drowned. I almost gritted my teeth, my fingertips digging into my palms, holding back tears, and choked out a roar, but there were signs of assault on her body. The policewoman sighed and stared at me, helplessly, afraid I would rush into the police station. Mrs. Grant, you said the other day that it was Irene's daughter who killed Lily, and now it's become an assault. I nodded my head anxiously. Yes. At least she was molested. I don't know who it was. Afraid she wouldn't believe me, I added, also, why was Lily's hairpin on Irene's daughter's head? She must have pushed Lily into the water. Sir, but you have no proof. Besides, Irene's daughter is only 9 years old. She couldn't have killed anyone. The policewoman frowned and impatiently denied me. Yes, only 9 years old. What about my daughter? What about my Lily? She was only 9 years old too. Everyone said I was crazy, including the police. April 30, 2022 was the day Lily had her accident. In the cold and gloomy morgue, though my heart was cut like a knife, I did not lose my basic sanity. With trembling hands, I caressed her soft and delicate body and burst into tears. On her inner thighs, I accidentally discovered bruises and lacerations. My intuition and my sensitivity to relationships made me realize that it couldn't have been caused by drowning. Behind Lily's death, there was a more terrible secret. The marks on her body were so obvious, but the policewoman insisted that Lily had accidentally fallen into the water and died. She was only 9 years old. Which beast could have done such a thing to her? I almost collapsed. Why didn't anyone believe me? Lily, my Lily, I cried my heart out. And my husband. He was comforting his mistress Irene at the door of the morgue. The big hands that had held me in his arms countless times were now gently patting Irene's back, even lovingly holding her daughter. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's okay. The little girl, about the same age as Lily. The black butterfly hairpin in her hair was particularly dazzling. That was clearly a birthday present. I bought for Lily the hairpin I put on her braid before going out. Lily happily carried her little pink school bag and acted cattishly with me. Mommy, I want to eat fried chicken nuggets tonight. At that time, I didn't know that this would be the last time I would see her. I flicked her little nose and chided, you little piggy, all you think about is eating. Okay, go on your spring outing today and be good to the teacher. I handed over my lively and lovely daughter and she came back a cold corpse. I saw the demonic little girl nestled in Edward's arms. Lily's bones were not yet cold. How could Edward do such a thing? The little girl raised her smile, which was exactly Lilyn's, and provocatively touched the hairpin and mouthed, "It's so pretty." I knew she was talking about the black butterfly hairpin. This was the 9-year-old girl in their mouths. I was going crazy. Why torture a mother's heart like this? I wanted to kill her right away. But I couldn't kill now. But I will someday. Click. The light in the living room was turned on. My eyes hurt as they recovered from the darkness. I collapsed on the floor, tears falling and dripping onto the picture in my arms. In the photo, Lily's pretty face was smiling. "Catherine." Edward stood in the doorway, somewhat at a loss as he called my name. He walked lightly over to me in my distraught state and placed a bag of steaming food on the coffee table, as he had countless times before. "Got you. Your favorite fish and chips." I stood up abruptly and slapped him hard across the face. "Get out." I hated his hypocritical look. At the moment Lily died, all his former tenderness and thoughtfulness turned into hypocrisy. I almost couldn't control my urge to kill him, collapsing and questioning. "Edward, tell me, what were you doing the day Lily had her accident?" "Finished. After getting married, I became a full-time housewife. The day Lily died, I asked him to pick up Lily from the spring outing, and I cooked at home, waiting for their father and daughter to return. However, I waited and waited, but did not see them, and instead received a call from the police. "Hello, is this Mrs. Grant? Are you Lily's mother? Your daughter drowned." They asked me to go to the hospital. All I remember is that my mind went blank and I scrambled to my destination. However, when I got to the hospital, I was confronted with my daughter's body in the morgue. I saw Edward, who was late, and Irene also received a call, but from the teacher. Because of the death, the spring outing was suspended, and parents came to the hospital to pick up their students, and she came to pick up her daughter. And my dear husband, he showed up at the hospital that day with Irene. He wasn't wearing a suit, which meant he hadn't gone to work. He didn't go to pick up Lily either. Faced with my questioning, Edward lowered his head, his eyes filled with pain and forbearance that I couldn't understand. That day, I happened to be with Ivan, talking about something very important. The teacher called and told me about it, so I accompanied her to the hospital. I sneered and took 2 steps back. His tall figure was reflected in my dark pupils. Something very important. More important than his own daughter's life. This was the man I had slept with for 10 years. When did Edward and I become like this? It started when Irene came back from abroad with her daughter. This person is like a thunderclap to me. She was Edward's childhood sweetheart. I had spent 10 years, but I still couldn't compete with her lethality. Our life was like a calm lake ruthlessly sailed through by a yacht, leaving ripples in its wake. Edward, who used to come home from work on time, suddenly started working late. Later I learned that Irene had joined the same company as him. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I clearly saw a lonely man and a woman hugging each other downstairs in the neighborhood. But I lied to myself. I must have seen it wrong. He who used to always go to the same few restaurants to eat suddenly started taking me to some more romantic restaurants when it came time for our anniversary. I didn't understand at the time, so I excitedly took Lily by the hand, took pictures of the dishes, posted them on my WeChat, moments and praised him wildly. "Edward, you're so sweet. Daddy, you're so sweet." Lily also pouted her little mouth and kissed him in my manner. However, I turned my head and saw the same dining location in Ian's moments and saw a photo of Edward with them, looking like a family of 3. Moreover, the date was earlier than mine. Despite all this, I still didn't doubt him. At least it never occurred to me to leave him. I craved his embrace. I loved him. I liked him holding me from behind. I liked him holding my hands while whispering my full name. "Catherine, Catherine." I could even ignore the lipstick marks on his white shirt, the strong rose fragrance on his suit. I'd smelled it. It was Irene's scent. It was the unattainable noblewoman scent. I'd smelled it at the orphanage as a child. At that time, I would sit on a bench and watch endlessly as the well-dressed couples took the children home. I kept hoping that the next one would be me. Unfortunately, I never did. Until with the help of kind people, I got into college on my own merit and met Edward. He was the school hunk in college, and after his dream lover, Irene, went abroad to study, he gave himself to me, this wildflower. He was the one who took the initiative to confess his love to me, and we got together naturally. I surrendered to his excellence and talent, his gentleness and gentlemanliness. Falling in love, getting married, having children, I thought my life was finally going to be smooth sailing. I had a home, I had him, and I had Lee. But now they ruined all my hopes. They killed my Lily, and even made her death a mystery. There was no evidence, and the police closed the case as an accidental drowning. Then I'll take revenge myself. The next time I saw Irene was in the elevator. I went down from the 18th floor of my house, and she boarded the elevator from the 17th floor. When Irene first returned to China, Edward found her a house and arranged it downstairs from ours. Then the elevator door opened, and we looked at each other. It was her daughter who spoke first. "Hello, Aunt Grant." She had a pair of narrow eyes that took on a shrewdness that didn't belong to a child when she smiled, not like my Lily at all. The black butterfly hairpin in her hair seemed to be about to fly. She was still wearing Lily's things. How dare she? How dare she? Seeing me staring at her hair with wide eyes, the little girl gave me a malicious smile. Auntie, Lily was really clumsy. I just gave her a little push that day, and she rolled down. I froze in place, hardly believing my ears. She admitted it. She admitted it. She killed my Lily. I wanted to rush up and strangle her, but Irene gently blocked me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach the little girl. Elaine was protecting her daughter. And my daughter? What about my daughter? Irene stepped on her nearly 4-inch high heels, her long wavy hair showing off all kinds of amorous feelings, her long skirt outlining her slender waist, and surging waves, attracting everyone's attention. I was nothing like her. I never quite understood how I got a plain-looking, ordinary-figured woman, at most worthy of the word delicate, how Edward could have fallen for me in the first place. I wasn't even worthy of being Irene's substitute. No wonder Edward wasn't sad when Lily died. He never cared about this daughter, and he never cared about me. Catherine, stop being crazy. Irene took her daughter's hand and curled her red lips. Edward said he wants to marry me. If I hadn't gone abroad, it wouldn't have been your turn. She looked at me contemptuously and smiled. You leave him? Anyway, your daughter is dead. But my daughter with him, Rachel, is still alive. She sure knew what to say to stab me in the heart. Her eyes fluttered like a scorpion full of malice. Rachel also chimed in with a smile. Aunt Grant, remember to throw all of Lily's things out. Her wound will be mine soon. Irene glanced at me. Oh, by the way, the elevator surveillance is broken. It's no use calling the police. I still had no evidence that Rachel had killed my Lily. Kisha William. Arriving on the first floor, they took the lead and walked out. I stumbled back abruptly and leaned against the wall, my chest heaving and my breathing labored, unable to suppress the painful scream any longer. I crouched down and clutched my hair. Die, all of you, die. I went to see Helen for the 11th time, Livy's homeroom teacher and the little double Rachel's homeroom teacher. She was an intellectual young lady, but at this point she spilled the water from her glass over my head, her clear eyes reflecting my embarrassed look. Catherine, can you please stop bothering me? I told you Lily's death was an accidental drowning. The police have investigated and closed the case. What do you want? Her face was flushed, and she shouted at me excitedly. Something was wrong. Definitely something. She was the only one there on the day of the spring outing. Why was she covering for the murderer? Lily liked her so much that she would come back and show off to me every day. Mom, our teacher Helen likes me so much. Mom, my braid was pulled down by a prankster, and teacher Helen tied it up for me again. As a teacher, how could she live up to Lily's admiration? I trembled with my fingertips and reached out to grab the corner of her clothes, pleading, Teacher Helen, I beg you think. Carefully, there were signs of assault on Livy's body. Her hairpin appeared on Rachel's head. There must be something wrong with all this. I beg you to tell the truth. Helen abruptly pushed me to the ground, without a trace of her usual composure as a teacher, and looked down at me coldly. Crazy. She left. I collapsed to the ground, rubbing my fingertips, a maniacal smile spreading across my face. Late at night, I double-locked the door and curled up in bed. Catherine, I bought you fish and chips. Edward knocked gently on the door. I shut him out and replied hoarsely, No need. After my daughter's death, I never wanted to see him again, and started sleeping in separate rooms. His footsteps paused and gradually moved away. I covered my ears, listening to the noise coming from my headphones. Yes, headphones. When I went to plead with Teacher Helen today, while pulling on the corner of her clothes, I planted a miniature listening device on her clothes. I bought it online for a lot of money. I'd been waiting all night, and finally, the sound of her fragmented footsteps and the closing of the door stopped abruptly. I heard a familiar voice, Teacher. Why are you here? It was Rachel. Helen went to the 17th floor, to Rachel's house. The teacher missed you. Didn't your mother say you were having a party today? I hurried over as soon as I could. With Rachel, Helen was all smiles, a far cry from the ferocious look she gave me. Sit down for a moment. I'm preparing the food. You're not here yet. From the headset came Aaron's somewhat distant voice. She should be in the kitchen. It's okay. I'll help you, Teacher, Helen joked familiarly. In the dark, my face was reflected in the glass window, horribly twisted and filled with hatred. So Teacher Helen was so close to Selena's family. Before I could think about it, I heard the sound of the door opening downstairs. "Cousin, so much delicious food." A quiet female voice rang out. This was the newcomer. "Claire, the police station is so busy, and you still came. You must have just gotten off work." "I greeted the newcomer. My heart sank. Claire at the police station. This was the policewoman who had turned me down 10 times. She called cousin. However, this was far from enough. "I'm not busy. The hospital is busy. Look at our doctor. Worse, he's lost weight from exhaustion." "Policewoman," Claire quipped. The doctor voice she was talking about complained. "You bet. I haven't had a good night's sleep because of Lily Irene. Feed me quickly." I heard my daughter's name from the doctor's mouth. Like a bolt from the blue in the night, I remembered her. The day Lee had her accident, it seemed like it was a young female doctor, surnamed Royce, who received me at the hospital. My heart pounded. At this moment, a knock on the door sounded in due course. "Catherine, I'm going out for a while. There's some business at the company that I stared at the door hatefully and didn't answer. He knocked twice more and getting no response sighed, "You get some rest. Don't think too much about it. I'll be going then." He left. After a while there was a moment of silence in the headset, and then, among the several female voices, a low male voice suddenly appeared. "Sorry I'm late." A bolt from the blue. This was my good husband. Just told me he was going to work. Turned around and went to the 17th floor. I couldn't control my anger any longer. Grabbed the glass and slammed it to the ground. The glass shattered. In the headset were the laughter of those women like fairies, like vipers. "Edward, you're late. 3 drinks for you. Chong. Drink a toast with Irene." Yes. What is human decency? It couldn't possibly be that, while your daughter's bones are not yet cold, her father was having a good time with the murderers and their protectors, right? But that's what Edward was doing now. Irene, Rachel, Helen, the teacher, Claire, the policewoman, Royce, the doctor. Which one of them was not related to Lily's death? The voices in the headset were both blurred and clear, intermittent. After 3 rounds of drinks and a full meal, I heard Irene say, "Let's play werewolf." Her voice came through the headset, like ice that had been condensed for 3 feet. "It's dark. Please close your eyes. Werewolves, please open your eyes." The game began. The first night, a civilian was killed. The witch did not save anyone. She was my first target. I followed her for a month. I looked around and made sure no one was there. Just as she took her key and opened the door, I knocked her unconscious with a baton from behind. "Teacher Helen, long time no see." She woke up. My voice was harsh in the darkness. The young teacher was tied to a chair, her hands and feet bound with red marks, a sharp knife against her neck. The knife was in my hand. Strangely enough, I didn't see any panic on her face. Her body exuded a faint scent of books. Her hair was messy, and she was in a sorry state, but her eyes met mine with extraordinary clarity. "Catherine," she smiled, seemingly unsurprised by my madness. The first night of werewolf, she was killed by the werewolves. Since they loved playing games so much, why don't I just kill them one by one in the order of the game? To avenge my Lily. I was so grateful to Irene. I wouldn't have known where to start if it wasn't for her inspiration. I used to trust and respect teachers as much as any parent. But Helen didn't deserve it. That night at the party, I heard everything that was said on the 17th floor through my headset. Our Rachel is so well behaved and cute. So what if she accidentally pushed Lily down? She deserves to die. That's what she said at the time. Thinking about it, my brain almost exploded, and I poked the knife at her neck. Blood slowly flowed out. I'll ask you one last time. Did Rachel kill Lily? Would you be willing to go to the police station with me and tell the truth? As long as you promise me, I won't. In the dim light, Helen interrupted me. Catherine, Rachel pushed Lily into the river for a black butterfly hairpin. I saw it with my own eyes, but I couldn't tell the truth. The dead are dead. Why torture the living? Kill me. The last bit of sanity was gone, and I plunged the knife into her neck, as if possessed. Shh, shh, shh. Blood splattered on my face. I killed someone. But I felt extremely exhilarating. Looking at the young girl's body, I squatted down, and a strange thought came to my mind. I pulled the knife from her neck and stripped her naked. Slash by slash, I carved a butterfly on her back. Something's missing. I started rummaging through boxes and cabinets, and finally found a bottle of black ink. A lifelike black butterfly appeared on Helen's white back. Beautiful. Edward was busy in the kitchen when I got home. The steaming food was on the table, appetizing. I was so hungry that I felt a little dizzy. I reached out and picked up a piece of meat and stuffed it into my mouth. Edward grabbed my hand. Your hands are dirty. Go wash them first. I looked down at my hands. They were covered in dried blood. Teacher Hammond's blood was really something. It got my hands dirty. I was a little annoyed. Edward didn't ask anything, just pulled me over and gently washed my hands with warm water. I was a little dazed, staring at his beautiful eyes, and said, I killed someone. The man didn't look up, his tone flat. I'm glad you're happy. Catherine, I want is for you to be happy. Happy my daughter died in vain. How can I be happy? My husband was having an affair and covering for the murderer. How can I be happy? Kill you all, then I will be happy. Don't worry, Edward. The last one will be you. The game continued. The second night, the witch was killed. She did not poison anyone. The second target, I decided to attack a month later. I was scared. I was shaking when I killed the first person. But when hatred filled my heart, and I was convinced that they were all accomplices, I had become accustomed to killing. This thrill of killing eased the pain in my heart. I had already inquired. Today was Dr. Royce's shift. I felt my way outside her on-call room, which was right next to the morgue. 3 o'clock in the morning. The hallway was empty. Green lights hit the pale walls, eerie. With the dagger in my pocket, I dragged an iron bar and slowly whipped into the on-call room. The female doctor, in her white coat, looked at me leisurely, not surprised by my arrival at all. Royce. I closed the door and sneered. What do you want to know? Dr. Royce had a round baby face, and it was hard to believe that she would be involved with Irene's family, that she would cover for the murderer, no matter what. But that's what happened. The night they had their party, I heard everything clearly in my headset. The marks on Lily's lower body were too obvious. I covered them up for a long time, but Catherine still saw them. Fortunately, You're at the police station. Claire just insists that Lily's fall was an accident. Rachel, don't fight over butterfly hairpins anymore. It's troublesome to accidentally kill someone. What do you like? And who voice will buy it for you? Why on earth? Why would they conspire to cover up the truth about Lily's death? They really deserve to die. Was Lily sexually assaulted? All I wanted to confirm was this one thing. Dr. Royce gave me a pitiful look. Sometimes it's a happy thing to be confused. I didn't understand what she meant. It was about my daughter. I didn't want to be confused. I smashed an iron bar against her. Was Lily sexually assaulted? Why did you help Irene's family hide the truth? What about your medical ethics? My face was grim. Dr. Royce was in pain. Catherine, it was Rachel who pushed her, and Lily was indeed sexually assaulted. I got the answer I wanted. Almost went crazy. One blow, then another on Royce's body, on her head. Until her face was unrecognizable. Until she was lifeless. I stepped on the bloodstains all over the floor, walked up to her body, pulled out the dagger and the black ink. Soon a lifelike butterfly appeared on her back. Edward didn't come home that day. I turned on the eavesdropper and my computer screen happily watching the 17th floor. I forgot to mention, after their party, that night, I stole Edward's key, and while Irene and Rachel were out, I installed an eavesdropper and a pinhole camera in the house on the 17th floor. Yes, that's right. My husband Edward had a key to Irie's house. At this moment, they were on the screen, sitting on the sofa. I don't know what they were talking about. Rachel ran happily, seemingly tired, and suddenly threw herself into Edward's arms, acting coquettishly daddy. Oh, an illegitimate daughter. How dare she be so arrogant and disgusting. Irene was wearing a bright red dress, outlining her voluptuous curves, and slowly sat down next to Edward. The two snuggled up to each other. When are you going to divorce Catherine? She asked. Edward didn't hesitate. I will definitely divorce her. Just wait. She's emotionally unstable lately. We don't have time, Edward. Irene stared at the man intently. Edward nodded. The two hugged each other intimately, getting closer and closer, and were about to kiss. Suddenly, the room went completely dark, the computer screen went black, and the headset went silent. The power was out. At this critical moment, the game continued. The third night. The hunter was killed. She did not take anyone with her. The third person I killed was Claire, the policewoman, which took some doing. I said before that I was a full-time housewife, and for the past 10 years, I had been so focused on Edward and Lily that I had neglected to exercise. I wasn't completely sure I could handle Claire. However, it seemed that even heaven was on my side. Claire was drunk. Another month passed. It was a stormy day, and Claire came out of the bar with Irene and Edward. The strange thing was that Rachel, a 9-year-old girl, went to the bar with them. Several people were arguing and shoving each other at the door of the bar. I hid in the corner like a rat in the gutter, watching them intently. Edward drove away with Irene and Rachel, looking at the direction it should be home. Claire was left alone, stumbling through the heavy rain. She and I stalked one after the other in a secluded alley. I was wearing a black raincoat. The rain inevitably beat on my face, blurring my vision. The iron bar dragged across the ground. splashing water. Claire's face was flushed. She turned and smiled drunkenly at me. Catherine. Why did everyone look at me with such strange eyes before they died? Why did they repent? Why wouldn't they give me fearless justice? Why did they have to kill my Lily? I hated every one of them. I rushed over and hit her over the head with the bar. Bang! Claire collapsed in the rain, her eyes looking at me painfully. Catherine, I don't want to die, but I have to. I didn't understand what she was saying. I squatted down, put the knife against the artery in her neck, and pressed Ginny as your cousin, so you disregarded your duty as a police officer to cover for the murderer. Is that it? Follow the victims. Claire stared at me and laughed crazily through the rain. Yes. I couldn't stand it any longer. I grabbed the dagger and plunged it in. Another work of art was finished, and I squatted in the alley like a madman using the dim streetlights to carve the black butterfly on her back. Suddenly someone passed by the entrance of the alley, holding an umbrella. The man seemed to hear something, stopped, and looked over at us through the curtain of rain. I panicked a little, hurriedly kicked Claire's body inside, and turned my head, viciously, to glare. The man froze, spat, and said crazy. A policewoman was dead, but no one called the police, and no one suspected me. I was a little puzzled, but didn't think much of it. After all, 3 people had died in 3 months, and there was no news coverage. I guessed that Edward had taken care of the loose ends for me, although I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Maybe the police would be knocking on the door soon. I had to hurry up. I kept reminding myself, my Lily, I had to avenge her with my own hands. After a few days of rest, Edward didn't go out much and stayed home with me every day. I stayed in Lily's room, holding her little blanket, smelling her scent, crying my eyes out. Edward would cook soup and meals for me every day at home, knocking on my door on time and calling Catherine, I made you your favorite fish and chips. Maybe I was tired of crying. I opened the door and walked out, sat down at the table with a sullen face. Edward sat across from me, the light in the living room hitting his face, setting off his gentle features and chiseled jawline. It suddenly occurred to me that Edward was a very contradictory man. I couldn't help but ask him, when are you going to divorce me? Edward froze and chuckled. Catherine, I'm not divorcing you. What about Irene and Rachel? I sneered. In the soft light, Edward suddenly stood up, walked up to me, his tall figure completely enveloping me. He hugged me tightly. Catherine, it's always been you that I've chosen, and only you. The words were supposed to be sweet, but they made my blood run cold. My mind kept replaying the bits and pieces of him and Irene on the 17th floor, those intimate images, and every daddy Rachel called out. At this moment, I was completely awake. The man I loved was a complete hypocrite. If only he had been honest, I could have left his body intact. Eat your fish, Catherine. Edward returned to his seat and lifted the lids off the bowl. I looked intently. A brightly colored fish, smelling and looking delicious, lay in the white porcelain dish. It actually had 6 fins. I thought I was seeing things. I rubbed my eyes. It was indeed 6 fins. Crystal clear. It made me feel incredibly happy and intimate, yet sad. Catherine, eat up. Isn't this your favorite fish and chips? Nana forte. Edward urged me, a strange smile on his handsome face. Are there really fish in this world with 6 fins? My favorite fish and chips. The game was coming to an end. The 4th night. Another civilian was killed. Edward went to work overtime. I stole his keys and sneaked into Irene's house. I saw through the surveillance that Irene wasn't home. Rachel wasn't tall enough to see out the peephole. I rang the doorbell, turned on my phone recording. It was Irene's voice, which I had prepared in advance. In the previous surveillance footage, I had randomly clipped one of her sentences. Rachel, it's Mommy. I tightened my grip on the iron bar. The little devil was very clever. I was worried that she would move a stool and stand on it and would not open the door for me if she saw me. So, just in case, I deliberately stepped aside and hid. The door opened. I rushed over, pointed the knife at her, pushed the door open, and rushed in, quickly closing the door behind me. Aunt Grant, Rachel, took a few steps back, innocently not realizing the seriousness of the matter, and grinned at me. Are you here to see Daddy? But Daddy's not here today. I was enraged and wanted to tear her face apart. I violently threw her to the ground, pressed her slender neck, raised the knife, and plunged it into her shoulder. I wouldn't let her die so easily. My hideous face was reflected in Rachel's dark pupils. Which hand do you use to push Lily? She looked at me silently, not answering my question, her eyes filled with fear. Aunt Grant, can I not die? I was taken aback for a moment, and instantly realized that she was putting on a pitiful act. I rudely pulled off the black butterfly hairpin from her head, my eyes bloodshot. Give me back my Lily. Before my eyes, I saw the image of Lily being pushed from a height. Suddenly, a childish voice rang in my ears. Aunt Grant, run. Off. I snapped back to my senses, the knife already plunged into Rachel's neck. She reached up to cover the gushing wound, but to no avail. Blood gushed out, staining her face red. I saw her smiling, her mouth full of blood. Aunt Grant, it's okay. I don't hurt. The door was suddenly kicked open. It was Irene. She ran back in a panic. I turned my head to look, holding the bloodstained knife, a gratified smile on my face. Finally, the person who killed my daughter was dead. I took my revenge. Irene leaned weakly against the door frame, looking at the tragedy before her, gasping for air. You killed Rachel. Seeing her own daughter's body, she was calmer than I expected. You all deserve to die, I roared, hoarsely, my body trembling uncontrollably. Happy to be killed the way you played games that night. Don't you love to play? Don't you love toying with life? When each person corresponded perfectly to a character in that night's game of werewolf, and I was the one who raised my hand to vote on their life and death. Irene stared at me for a moment, then abruptly changed the subject and burst into tears. You killed my daughter. I'm going to fight you. She lunged at me. I don't know why, but at that moment, I instinctively gripped the knife and took a few steps back. However, Irene bumped into me. Her high heels twisted. She lost her center of gravity and fell towards me. It was obviously clumsy acting, but it was such a coincidence. Her neck happened to brush against the blade of a knife as I lowered it. A bright red line of blood blossomed across her white neck. I dropped the knife in a panic and tried to help her up, but she had already collapsed weakly on the ground. her body falling on top of Rachel's small one. You actually killed me. Edward will avenge me. Irene clutched the wound on her neck tightly, her throat making a hum sound like a broken bellows. The last bit of strangeness in my heart instantly disappeared. Edward will avenge you. Mother and daughter, will he? Fine. He's next in. I stared blankly at the bodies of the mother and daughter, carefully carving the black butterflies. Edward came home particularly early that day. I didn't change my clothes. I sat on the sofa covered in coagulated blood, my hair disheveled. By my hand, I had my knife and iron bar. Unconsciously, I had already killed so many people. I suddenly felt a trance. It's okay. I'll be free after I kill Edward. I can go and accompany my Lily. My hands were tightly clutching a stack of photos, and there were a bunch scattered at my feet. 10, 100, 1,000. All of the photos featured the same little girl, and the content of the photos was bizarre. There were photos of her eating, sleeping, bathing, going to school. All of the photos revealed two words: candid shots. These were what I found from Edward's study, and the girl in the photos was my Lily. Beep, password. Correct. Welcome home. I put the dagger in my pocket. The door was opened, and Edward, dressed in a suit, walked in. Honey, I stood up with a smile, greeted him, took his briefcase, and hung it on the wall, just like the past 10 years. Catherine, he suddenly reached out and pulled me into his arms. I was quicker and more decisive than ever, plunging the knife into his abdomen. You, Edward grunted and bent over, clutching his stomach. Catherine, I'm sorry, he nodded. Sorry to whom? Why say sorry? Why did he do that to Lily? Lily was only 9 years old. Edward, you really are a demon. I gritted my teeth, roaring hysterically, the knife in my hand raised again, but drooping weakly. In the end, I couldn't remember how many times I stabbed him. Thinking about those pictures, I blacked out and almost fainted. I no longer needed to ask the final answer. The one who violated Lily was Edward. I arranged his body into a giant blood-red butterfly shape. It was pouring rain. I walked aimlessly down the street. At the intersection, people were coming and going, cars were bustling. I stumbled along, not knowing where to go. Finally, I walked into the police station, the same police station where the policewoman named Claire had turned me away 10 times before. Ma'am, what's wrong? Winflo. In a daze, a man in uniform helped me to a seat. I killed someone. I'm here to turn myself in. I hung my head weakly. In bits and pieces, I recounted how I had killed him. It must be a capital offense, right? I killed so many people. It didn't matter. I was willing to pay the price. Well, Miss Catherine, actually a young police officer, looked at me cautiously, hesitant to speak. The people you were just talking about, they died 2 years ago. I stood up abruptly and ran towards the door in horror. I hadn't even introduced myself yet. How did he know my name? Also, what did he mean by that? They were all dead. How was that possible? Behind me, an older police officer was reprimanding the young one. I told you not to call her name, don't provoke her. Do you have any idea what she's? I covered my ears and ran as fast as I could. Beep. A piercing car horn blared. I turned around abruptly. The pedestrians around me became blurred, and the cars passed by me, slowly like a slow-motion movie. Most importantly, in the distance, in the direction of my house, the high-rise building suddenly began to shake violently. The 18th floor collapsed. The 17th floor disappeared. Everything was reduced to rubble. It was like I had a very, very long dream. Miss Catherine, Miss Catherine, someone was calling me softly. The pungent smell of disinfectant, the white ceiling that made me dizzy. Catherine, someone called my name tentatively. How annoying, wasn't that little vixen already dead? Why was she still bothering me? Lily, why were they calling my daughter's name? Rachel, the little devil, was dead. Too, stop mentioning her. Helen, the teacher, was killed by me too. Claire, the police, were gone. Royce, the doctor, was gone too. Finally, the person raised his voice and repeated tirelessly, Catherine. I opened my eyes abruptly, sat up in horror, drenched in cold sweat. Name? Catherine Grant. Do you remember what happened on August 18, 2020? Yes. Witness Catherine Grant. Please state the facts. I'm the sole survivor of the 818 case. My name is Catherine Grant. My name is Catherine Grant. 2 years ago, my good friend Irina and I took our twin daughters, Lily and Rachel, on a trip. We were unfortunate enough to hail an unlicensed black car and fell into the hands of a serial killer. In that remote, unfinished building, we met other victims. There were 18 floors in that building, and we had tried to escape, but to no avail. Among the victims were teachers, doctors, and a police officer who had just graduated from college. The serial killer seemed to be interested in collecting women of different professions, personalities, and even ages. My good friend Irene was a very talented writer, and I was just an ordinary and cowardly person. Perhaps it was because of my ordinariness that he wasn't very interested in me and spared my life. No, to be precise, it was those 6 people who saved my life. That's why I'm still alive today. That's why I can stand here today and identify the killer. The first victim was Lily, the younger of the twins. The serial killer seemed to have a physical disability and enjoyed getting his kicks in perverted ways. The 9-year-old twin sisters became his first works. He couldn't let them go. Lily bit him out of fear, which angered him, and he held her down in a water tank and drowned her alive. The second victim was Helen, a great people's teacher. Although she didn't know Lily and Rachel, she had been protecting the 2 children after Irene was knocked unconscious. In the most critical moment, she couldn't bear to see the children suffer and fought back. In the end, she was brutally murdered by the serial killer. The third victim was Royce, a kind doctor. She told us that she was not a good doctor, just assigned to work in the morgue. But she was a very good doctor in my heart. During those 44 days of captivity, it was always she who used the limited resources and the means to heal us. But because she had stuck the killer in the right eye with a rusty nail, she was pushed off the 18th floor by him, giving me a chance to escape. The fourth victim was Claire, a brave police officer. Although she had just graduated, although she was inexperienced, she had been doing her best to protect all of us. She was the first to bear the brunt, and the serial killer said he wanted to tame her. A police officer with such integrity. How interesting it would be if she were tamed. Claire was tortured to death. But during those 44 days in darkness, she had been teaching us escape skills, survival knowledge. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have had a chance to stand here. The fifth victim was Rachel, the older of the twins. Rachel, with her lively and cheerful personality, was eventually tortured to death. She couldn't bear to see her mother, her sister, and Aunt Grant suffer, so she went to the demon on her own. She begged the serial killer to spare her mother and sister, to spare her Aunt Grant, and she would be good and listen to him. She naively thought that if she made a deal with the devil would keep his word. However, she still died in that building, her clear eyes wide open. There wasn't a single piece of clothing left on her body, and her skin was covered in horrific wounds. Rachel was the most afraid of pain and the most coquettish. Every time she fell before, she would wipe her tears and cry in a sweet voice, "Aunt Grant, Rachel hurts. So much blow on it, and it won't hurt anymore." The sixth victim was Eerie, my best friend. We grew up together in an orphanage. She was the one who knew me best, and my only family, like my own sister. After being held captive, each of us was trying to survive. We encouraged each, although we didn't know each other well, we all tried our best to give each other hope. We have to survive. We have to survive, whoever it is, even if only one person can escape. We have to identify the killer. We have to stand in court and let him get what he deserves. We have to make him pay. My friend, because of the death of her daughter, had long been determined to die. At the last moment, she stopped the serial killer for me. That's how I was able to escape. If it wasn't for those 6 people, I wouldn't be alive. I was a coward. I was a survivor. I deserved to die. In the White Ward, the psychiatrist gave me a full psychological assessment. Finally, he let out a long sigh and comforted me. Those 6, they should all be relieved now. Catherine, this is the first time I've encountered such a complex case as yours. It's a medical miracle that you're able to recover. You actually split off the personalities of all the victims in the 18 case. The writer, the teacher, the doctor, the police officer, the twin sister, they were never coming back. I smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry to bother you, doctor." "It's okay. It's my job, but can you tell me about what you went through in your dreams?" the doctor asked curiously. I thought about it and explained during the time when I was dissociated and delusional. My sub-personality, Irene, designed a game for me. Oh, the doctor was intrigued. A sly look flashed across my eyes. Werewolf. I found out everyone's identity, so I was able to wake up. The psychiatrist asked, in surprise, "Were you the wolf?" "No, I was just a voting audience," I said with a smile. "Then who was the wolf?" the doctor pressed. I fell silent, not wanting to continue the topic, just smiling. I won the game, so I survived. The psychiatrist didn't press any further, but comforted me. "It's okay, you don't have to feel guilty anymore. It's because of your deep sense of guilt that you split off those personalities. It's not easy to be alive. They protected you, not to see you in so much pain and self-blame now." I nodded, watching the woman's retreating figure. The old and young police officers entered the psychiatrist's office. "Is she really cured?" asked the old cop. The doctor nodded firmly. "Yes, judging by the test results, she's definitely cured. It was those sub-personalities that helped her." The young cop asked curiously, "Huh? Can personalities help personalities?" The doctor explained. "Yes, for her to be fully recovered, all the personalities have to disappear. Only when they are gone can the main personality truly wake up. Perhaps those sub-personalities took some rather drastic measures to help her wake up. After all, those personalities are all restorations of the victims. In the 818 case, their personalities won't be too different from those of the real people. After all, Catherine is a case of imitative restoration. People from all walks of life. There was even a writer named Irene. Presumably they all worked together to help her recover. The old cop understood and nodded thoughtfully. He looked in a direction. The woman had disappeared and had a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right, but he couldn't put his finger on it. That serial killer has been brought to justice, right? Asked the doctor. The young cop rushed it. Answer, yeah. That beast. He's been sentenced to death. Immediate execution. Satan. That's good. Oh, by the way, what's his name again? I'll have to do a good study of his criminal psychology someday. Edward Blake. Blake? Which Blake? Black as in the color. Geez, it's such a high-profile case. You don't even know the name of the serial killer. Go look it up yourself. I stood at the entrance of the hospital, facing the warm sunshine, breathing in the fresh air greedily. The look in the man's eyes, as he looked at me in court, suddenly flashed before my eyes. What kind of look was that? Cold, vicious, resentful. After being stabbed in the right eye by Dr. Lois, he only had his left eye left. He stared at me with that one eye, a strange smile on his lips. Catherine the Dragon Slayer has become the dragon. Those were the last words he said to me in court. I couldn't help but touch my face, shaking my head with a wry smile. There was no denying that the man did have a handsome face. Not far away, on the advertising screen of a high-rise building, a series of reports on the 818 case were being played on a loop. An old expert said worriedly, "We must pay attention to the mental health of every victim in a case to prevent them from developing post-traumatic stress disorder." The host asked, "Professor, can you be more specific?" The expert sighed and said, "For example, Stockholm Syndrome." I stopped and stood under the advertising screen, watching the scene calmly. The black butterfly tattoo on my back suddenly seemed to burn, throbbing with pain. That was his handiwork. After each of his crimes, I had his handiwork on my back, too. No, that wasn't right. I was his most perfect work.